Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Manchester to Madrid World Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Rogers, and I'll be joined today by my good friend and co-host of the show, Sam Johnson. Today we have a great episode planned for everyone, covering all things world football. But first, if you're checking us out for the first time and like what you hear, we would greatly appreciate if you subscribed, followed us on Podbean, and shared with 3 of your friends that love football as much as we do. We are available everywhere you listen to your podcasts, including Apple, Google, and Spotify. Find us on Twitter at RRMTMFootball and at SJ10MTM, or send us an email at mtmfootballpod@gmail.com. We will do our very best to respond to anything sent our way, and now let's get to our second show. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing good, Ryan. Thanks for kicking us off there. I think, all of us are kind of struggling right now without football, but there does seem to be a light at the end of the tunnel here. Bundesliga possibly starting May 15th. As we're recording this, it's about a week from now. So yeah, that's definitely good news for us to talk about. But yeah, no, I'm doing good. Trying to keep myself entertained over the quarantine time period. How about you?
Yeah, I'm really excited, actually. It looks like Bundesliga is going to be starting next weekend, La Liga soon to follow, and then hopefully we'll also see the Premier League and Serie A in the next month or so. So I'm really looking forward to soccer kicking off, finishing this season. I'm really excited.
Absolutely, it'll be super interesting to see kind of how the leagues maybe kind of adapt their rules. Maybe we've heard about in England especially some rule changes that we could see, like shortened halves, more substitutions and stuff like that.
Yeah, the 5 subs would be really interesting. That's something FIFA's recently been talking about just because of the game congestion. It looks like most teams have anywhere from 10 to 12 games left, so squeezing those into about a month and a half will be interesting, and we'll see how rules change to just make it easier for the players going forward.
Yeah, no, we could definitely see something like that. The FA in England might not be too big of a fan of the new rule changes, but there's reports that the English government could be mandating more substitutions and in shortened halves like that. So that'll be super interesting to see. And of course, all around Europe to see how kind of players return to form, whether they, play different behind closed doors. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I was expecting no season for the rest of this year and not being able to see soccer again until August, September. So I'm glad we are going to have the season back. But kicking us off on our show, we are going to go ahead and get started with a bold prediction from Sam.
Yeah, so my bold prediction, the first one to kick off the Manchester to Madrid podcast, is that Robert Lewandowski will win the Ballon d'Or in 2020. Now, my kind of thinking here is, depending on, kind of how the rest of the year goes, we might see, one big competition, the Champions League. We might see that finish out. In my opinion, Bayern are probably, the lead runners for that competition right now. And so as we look at who's going to win the Ballon d'Or, we have to look at trophies. And I think Bayern, a lot of people would agree that Bayern are in a great spot to win the Bundesliga right now, to return to the form they were in pre-quarantine with winning like 14 out of 15 matches since December. So on great form there. And as we look at the Ballon d'Or trophies given out over the past couple of years, trophies have been a huge indicator on who's going to win that. So I think if we see Bayern win 2 or 3 trophies, including the Champions League and Bundesliga, then I think that Robert Lewandowski could have a huge shot at winning the award.
Yeah, I expected Euros to be a really big indicator of who would win the Ballon d'Or this year, but since those have been postponed to next summer, I think any team that is able to win the double, any of their elite players would definitely stand a shot. Lewandowski included. He's killing it as far as goal-scoring form. His team is on fire. Personally, I think they're the best club in Europe right now. Hansi Flick's been able to create this system that has just resulted in tons of goals, being sound defensively, a strong midfield all over the pitch. They are fantastic. And if they were to win the double, like Sam said, I definitely think Lewandowski deserves a shout at the Ballon d'Or this year.
And I think if looking back at kind of the past couple of years, he's been right in around that shout, or right around kind of the 4th or 5th in that race, and that's with Bayern not being like their top selves that we saw in maybe 2010 to kind of 2014-ish range there. So I think that'll be super interesting to watch, and I think that Lewandowski got a great chance. Let's hear about yours, Ryan. Your hot take.
Yeah, so my hot take for this week is Gareth Bale ends up staying an additional year at Real Madrid. Basically, everyone under the sun had predicted that he would be leaving this summer. Obviously, we all know about the poor interactions him and Zidane consistently have. There seems to always be this beef, this tension on and off the field. Off the field, Bale has created some drama. Zidane has openly said he has chosen Isco over him on multiple occasions in the 4-4-2 diamond as opposed to putting Bale out on the wing. It just looks like all signs point to Bale leaving. But now with the coronavirus here, it looks like Bale could definitely stay. He's obviously on huge wages. He's the second highest wage earner at Real Madrid.
I think it's a strange one for us going forward. What kind of Gareth's future will hold here. I think it's what you said about the wages. That's the thing that kind of holds back some teams in Europe for going for him. Mainly teams that would come to mind, maybe Inter Milan, Bayern Munich, maybe Juventus could be in with a shout for him, but it's that wage bill and that injury history that no one really knows what's going on with Gareth right now, and whether that he's not being played because he's not good enough anymore, or he's not being played for his injury record, or whether it's just simply, Zinedine Zidane just doesn't like him.
Yeah, I just don't think Zidane rates him anymore. Plus, you factor in the injuries. He didn't score a single goal at the Bernabeu this past season. I wouldn't be surprised if that stays the same. He's scored like 3 goals this season, I think, so his output's been very low, and to be frank, he rarely even gets on the field anyways because of the amount of injuries. So you combine that with his high wage bill. If Madrid were to demand any sort of transfer fee, I think he's actually going to be stuck at Real Madrid for another year.
I think if Real Madrid were to require a transfer fee for Gareth Bale, it would definitely kind of warn off some of those teams that could possibly be interested. Maybe MLS would be kind of sniffing around. If there wasn't a transfer fee, that could be a possible move. But again, like I said, the wages, that's the biggest thing for me. And with the coronavirus coming in and kind of knocking down the price of certain players, but also kind of limiting the amount of money teams have to spend, it could be really difficult for him to see him leaving the Bernabeu this summer.
Yep, I think he is going to stay another year. Well, next up on the show, I want to kick it over to Sam. He's going to touch on a few brief Manchester United news pieces from this past week.
Yeah, so there's not much going on right now in England, especially with the FA and the English government kind of going back and forth on whether we'll see football again in the month, probably not the month of May at this point, but hopefully the month of June. But we do have a couple of things that we can talk about. Mainly for me, I'll just jump right into the Jadon Sancho ordeal right now. For me, it seems like every day we're seeing a different story, whether it be surrounding Ed Woodward, whether it be surrounding Jadon Sancho and his agent, whether it be surrounding Dortmund and whether they want to sell or not. It's such a confusing mess right now, which is kind of something we've seen with Manchester United's transfers over the last couple of years. So it'll be really interesting to see how that goes, but I think that it does make sense, Jadon Sancho going to Manchester United for sure, and it's just about kind of agreeing that transfer fee, and if United do have the money. We saw last week Ed Woodward saying that Manchester United don't have the money that I think everyone thinks to spend this transfer window with the virus and its implications. Whether you think that's kind of a cover-up or not, I think that the Jadon Sancho deal will be difficult to get done because he's English, because he's one of the best up-and-coming players in the world. And so, we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. And in addition to that, we've seen the academy season kind of completely canceled in England. It'll be super interesting to see how that affects the development of younger players in the near future, and also that we've seen, of course, the players being out of training, for the senior players and the academy players being out of training for, at this point, going on about 2 months now. Whether that will have a positive effect on some players that had injuries before, or whether that will make players sluggish now and maybe not performing to their best of their ability, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, hopefully no developments are stalled because of the break in the academy season. That's really unfortunate. Obviously, we see big teams like Manchester United, Real Madrid, other clubs like that do a very good job of emphasizing youth, the upcoming of new talents and things of that nature.
Yeah, and we see with our big players, the first team players, they're going to kind of get the individualized kind of training outside of the training grounds, kind of like via Skype calls, whatever it may be, from the training staff. But the younger players probably won't get that. Won't get near as much of that kind of attention from their clubs. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how those players, kind of continue their growth, and whether this, kind of this extended period of time off of football, which they probably never had before, how that affects them.
Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting. They've been playing nonstop, just like the professionals, for so long. So a big halt could definitely alter their growth in the near future.
Yeah, and that's kind of all the firm Manchester United news we have. We don't have much right now, like we said, with kind of football being stalled in England for now, and no one really sure what's kind of going on. But I know there's quite a few things going on with Real Madrid. Tell us about it, Ryan.
Yeah, so I want to touch briefly on two quick things. First off, it's really exciting, actually. As of yesterday, Real Madrid went back to their training facilities. They all got tested for the coronavirus. They were able to talk to Zidane a little bit, so it's just really encouraging seeing the players back together. Hopefully we will see a return to La Liga in the next month or so. It looks like they're going to be returning to training next week, so that's just really exciting. It is really encouraging just to see those guys that you love watching week in, week out return, be back together again. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on. Hopefully all those results will turn negative and we will have a return to La Liga in the very near future. Next up, I wanted to briefly touch on Eduardo Camavinga and the rumor circulating around him. Just like with Manchester United and Jadon Sancho, every single day it changes. A few days ago, we were looking at Eduardo Camavinga being essentially a certainty, a certain transfer arriving for Real Madrid this summer, but that could definitely change. Since League One canceled their season and Stade Rennais finished third, it looks like they'll be playing in Champions League. And at 17, I think Camavinga is being very smart with his career, not wanting to jump ship to a big club where he won't get to play. And I think we could definitely see him stay another year at Stade Rennais and play in the Champions League.
I think, with Camavinga, we have one of the most talented young players in Europe. If you watch him play now, he just has such a cool head on his shoulders already. It's just incredible to watch. Kind of the maturity that he shows on the field. He's definitely a great replacement for Casemiro in the coming future. And whether that be playing alongside him rather than later, we'll wait and see with him.
Yeah, what I'm anticipating is some sort of deal we strike with Rennais in the region of 40 to 60 million, and then either loaning him back to Rennais for another season, something along those lines where he can continue to develop and not just sit on the bench, because although he's going to be eventually a really good replacement for Casemiro, nobody is touching Casemiro's position. It looks like he's going to be the starter there for the next 3-4 years at least. So Camavinga's growth could really stall if he were to come to Real and sit on the bench. So hopefully we'll see him at Rennais for maybe another season, some sort of deal along those lines that allow him to continue his growth and it not be altered by coming to Madrid and never seeing the field.
Yeah, no, I think if we look at Real Madrid and their history of kind of loaning players out that might not be ready for the first team yet, we look at Hakimi and Odegaard especially. Those two players having fantastic seasons at their respective loan clubs. That's been a huge success for Real Madrid in the past few years. So I don't see why they couldn't do that as well with Camavinga.
Yeah, for the most part, minus a few exceptions such as Andre Lunin, we've done a really good job of finding good clubs to loan our players. Reguilón this year as well has had a fantastic season at Sevilla. Obviously, Hakimi has been an assist machine running down the right wing at Dortmund. He's able to play on the left. He's been able to play with really high-quality players, play in the Champions League. Martin Odegaard has been one of the best midfielders in La Liga this year. Hopefully we see that continue once the league gets back. But yeah, I think maybe an additional season at Rennais or even a different club would do really good things for Camavinga's development.
So guys, we're going to jump into some more general transfer news here. I'm going to go ahead and start it off with the news about Leroy Sané from Manchester City. I think a lot of people were expecting him to move to Bayern this summer, and I think that move is getting closer and closer to being done. I think I'm hearing that the player and the club, Bayern Munich, have agreed a 5-year contract, which is great for him and Bayern Munich. I think there's a lot of varying reports out there right now. What the price may be that Manchester City would want. Of course, Leroy Sané has a year left on his contract, so that has to be weighing in on the mind of Manchester City, not letting him go for free next summer. Right now, Bayern are trying to push across maybe a 60 to 65 million pound move for Leroy Sané. I think that maybe Manchester City value him higher and are looking for a little bit more money, depending on kind of what reports you see. I think there are some reports out there that say that the deal is really close to being done, and maybe it's waiting on the media to pick up on it or the clubs to kind of confirm it here.
I don't see City keeping Sané around for another year, especially if he were to leave for free next summer. I think the only way he stays is if there's a massive U-turn and he signs a new deal. But I would expect this to go on throughout the summer and eventually Bayern and City agree to some sort of deal. Now, granted, that's probably going to be less than City were hoping for. Before this coronavirus, we were definitely looking at a £100 million deal at least, but with the resulting fees being dropped and player values decreasing, I would expect to see somewhere, like Sam said, anywhere from 60 to 70 million. Although that might be a lot of money for the summer, those two clubs definitely could work out a deal, and I think it would be best for both clubs and for the player.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a tough one for Leroy Sané looking at it, because he had some incredible years at Manchester City here and a fantastic team, but he has to be looking at his career at this point. Does he see himself starting in Manchester City's team right now? We don't know who they're going to bring in this summer. We also know that there is a possibility that Manchester City aren't going to be playing Champions League football the next 2 years. So, for the player's point of view, is City the best place for him, and does he want to get out? And I think the answer for him should be yes. He should want to get to a Bayern Munich team that is kind of soaring right now, that I think he could slot into and make them even better.
Yeah, Bayern are a guaranteed lock for Champions League. He would get to go back to his native country, and he would get to partner Serge Gnabry and Robert Lewandowski, which would just be a deadly front three. They would definitely be favorites or co-favorites for the Champions League. So I think a move would definitely suit him this summer.
Yeah, so for kind of our transfer radar here, I'm going to give this kind of a 7 or 8 here. I'm pretty confident personally that we'll see Leroy Sané go to Munich this summer. It just makes too much sense for the player and the club, and all it takes now is for the clubs to agree a good price.
Well, next up, we are going to discuss Timo Werner. Now, this is constantly a story that is developing each and every day. It seemed like he was certain for Liverpool. That might still be the case, but there's definitely some things that could change that. We've seen him say he definitely wants to move abroad, and England is looking likely, but there's no guarantees that he's set on Liverpool. Liverpool have recently asked Timo Werner for some additional time just to weigh up their options, consider if the price is right, things of that nature. And I think in the past day or so, we've seen some other clubs, potentially in England, sniffing around, reaching out to his agent and seeing if he would be interested in a move to them. Teams like Manchester United, Chelsea, they could definitely use a striker.
Absolutely, and I think that we see Timo Werner, the problem with Liverpool right now is he certain he's going to get starting time there? And I don't think the answer is yes. I think that, of course, Liverpool have had huge success with their front three. And if I'm Timo Werner, why am I going to go there and not necessarily get, starting game time, not be the main man up top? I think that we've seen in the last couple of days, Timo and his agent say that, if Liverpool were to move on one of those front three players, and that would be an absolute certain destination for him. But I think I definitely agree there that, it might be better for him to consider his other options if he doesn't know that he can go there and get a starting position.
Yeah, as far as a Raider goes, I would probably put this right around a 5. It's genuinely a toss-up. I think he will definitely leave Leipzig this summer. I think he's outgrown that club, his goal record, his output. He definitely deserves the next step up. As far as English clubs goes, it will be really interesting to see where he goes. I think it will be to Liverpool, but there's either going to have to be some sort of slightly decreased fee, or maybe another club does get in there and is able to pull off the deal. I think there are other clubs in England that need Timo Werner more than Liverpool does, and I think that's something he should definitely consider when he factors in minutes.
No, I think that Liverpool is absolutely the best destination for him, and I think for a Liverpool point of view, they need, they might not need him right now, but for a top team like that, it's great for them to kind of keep rebuilding, reloading, and for the top teams we've seen, the dynasties of European football over the last maybe 20 years, they've always had that next replacement in ready to go, a world-class player behind a world-class player. That's always the way it's been. So for Liverpool, it's big for them to go ahead and grab hold of Timo, I think, as opposed to one of their rivals grabbing onto him. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. In terms of my rating for this, I'd have to agree with Ryan here. It's about a 5 for me.
So now we're going to kick it on to our main segment of the show. Our episode, if you haven't seen, is called The Beautiful and Damned for a reason. We chose this because we wanted to talk about our favorite and least favorite players over the years. Sam and I were both born in 1999 and have been watching soccer anywhere from 10 to 15 years now, so we've developed a love and hate towards certain players. Some we aspire to be, we look up to, they're our heroes, and others we love to hate. They're villains. We hate watching them on the field. We don't enjoy our teams going up against them week in, week out. So, yeah, I'm going to kick it over to Sam, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the players he's learned to love over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you guys kind of listen, especially to me over the next couple of podcasts, you'll kind of see that I am a big fan of midfielders. I think that, having a solid midfield is probably the most important part to any team, and that'll definitely be portrayed in my loves and hates as well. But I'm going to start off my loves with a player that is very loved by Manchester United fans over the last 25 years, and that's going to be Paul Scholes. Even more than 25 years for Paul Scholes, coming up in 1992 for Manchester United. One of the best midfielders of all time. All you have to say about Paul Scholes is there are many, many top midfielders, Andrea Pirlo, Andres Iniesta, who would say if they could have played with one player in their careers, it would have been Paul Scholes. Paul Scholes just had this mentality about him on the field that no one was going to beat him. He could spray a pass, any direction, any time, any distance, anything like that. He ran all day. He put his body in line every single game. It was fantastic to watch for United fans, and I think fans all around the world that appreciate great midfielders. He encapsulates everything that Manchester United is about: winning trophies, attacking football, and just incredibly quality players.
Yeah, Paul Scholes is one of those players I wish I could have seen more. I only got to catch his last one or two seasons at the end of his United career, but Paul Scholes reminds me of a much, much more talented Jordan Henderson. Now, I don't want to compare a United player to a Liverpool player, as that might offend a couple people, but I think Paul Scholes could really do it all. He had that high work rate that was extremely, extremely helpful for his coaches, extremely appreciated by his teammates. The leadership ability, the box-to-box midfielder role that he played, it was just extremely needed during that time, and he did a great job at whatever he did. He could play a ball, he could track back defensively, he could win a tackle, could score goals here and there. He was a really awesome player to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And for next on my list is going to be another midfielder, and Paul Scholes' midfield partner for a long time in the mid 1990s, to kind of the mid 2000s, and that's Roy Keane. Now, and a lot of people will kind of, bat an eye at this. United fans will understand completely here. If we look over the history of Manchester United, there might not be a more, iconic player for our club than Roy Keane. Roy Keane was the captain for a long time. The dirty player, a lot of people consider that, and that's something that's lost in the game today. I think a lot of people can definitely appreciate the way that Roy Keane played, and that how, we don't see that in football anymore. And it wasn't just him being dirty. He was an incredible footballer as well. He had great skill. He was all over the field. There wasn't a blade of grass that he didn't cover in every game. And so, just an incredible midfielder, and that I think that the world of football is missing now. So next on my list is a very similar player. It's going to be Bastian Schweinsteiger. Now, growing up, I did have kind of an influence of Bundesliga football in my life. And this kind of stems, a long way back to when Bastian Schweinsteiger, and that incredible Bayern team, maybe in the early 2010s, was just kind of ruling world football, an incredibly fun team to watch. And Bastian Schweinsteiger was always at the heart of that, always, pulling the strings. He could drop back the defense if he was needed. He could, go forward and play a number 10 role. He could spray the ball left and right. It was an incredible player to watch, and a huge influence on kind of the player that I wanted to be growing up. I think that he's the closest to what I aspired to be, and that he was just all over the place. He was a leader in the team, a leader in the German national team as well, and just a player that I think everyone appreciated growing up, whether you liked Bayern or you disliked Bayern or whatever your allegiances may be. I think that the Bastian Schweinsteiger kind of gained the appreciation of everyone.
Yeah, Bastian Schweinsteiger was definitely one of those players that it was really hard to dislike. He could really do it all. Now, one thing I really loved about Schweinsteiger was his size yet mobility. He was fairly big, similar to a player such as Casemiro we see today, that has the size, the physical strength, but he's not the fastest player in the world, but he's able to make up for that with just his mobility. it might look a little weird at times, but he can play that box-to-box role, get all over the pitch. He can sit back deep and sort of just sit right in front of his defenders and really help them, or he can push forward a little bit. He can add a goal here and there from long distance. Just an all-around ball hawk, an awesome player to watch, an incredible leader both for Bayern Munich and Germany.
Absolutely. And so, fourth on my list, another midfielder, of course. It's Andrea Pirlo. Now, I think that, growing up, I didn't get to see too much of Italian football until, more recently I kind of started getting into Serie A. But I think, everyone knew about Pirlo. Now, whether that be from, the World Cup, 2006 World Cup to, just the Italian national team being prominent as they were kind of growing up, and just being able to watch that incredible style of play that kind of AC Milan, and then when he moved on to Juventus, were able to play because of his very dynamic play style, his ability to pick up the ball in the midfield, to slow down the game, but also make things happen with a snap of a finger. He could hit a player on the counterattack in a heartbeat. He could kind of receive the ball from the defenders and maybe on the half turn spread it out to the fullbacks. And of course, we all know that iconic penalty style that Andrea Pirlo kind of adopted, that kind of chip penalty. And so, yeah, it's just another midfielder that just has a graceful game, and that was incredibly fun to watch.
Yeah, Andrea Pirlo oozed class. I don't see how you can't like him. For the lack of movement he had, especially as he aged, he was still able to just dance around the field. Nobody could touch him. His passes were perfect. His touch was always elegant and pristine. He never put a ball in the wrong place. His penalties were super fun to watch. I remember those last 1 to 2 years when Juventus went to the Champions League final. Pogba was still around. Their midfield was absolutely incredible, and that was all anchored by Andrea Pirlo's leadership and ability to move the ball around the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll get into my last love here for the episode, and that is my favorite player of all time by a mile, and that is Wayne Rooney. Now, growing up, as I said, starting watching football in around 2006, Wayne Rooney was always there, always scoring goals left and right, always being that bully. He would bully defenders. He would sneak in and around. He had that physical game, but he also had the skill as well. He was just buzzing around the field. Later in his career, dropped back in the midfield, and we saw kind of another element to his game that we never saw, and that was the ability to pass the ball, the ability to control the game. Whereas, kind of for the first 10 years of his career, he was just a raw goal scorer, and we saw it like that, and we saw the impact that Wayne Rooney had both to the Manchester United team and the England national team, being the all-time leading goal scorer for both entities. So, yeah, definitely an incredible player, and a player that I will miss dearly. And when he retires, and of course, right now with him playing at Derby, he's still showing the level he has. He might not have the physical ability that he used to, but we still see him being a huge influence on the field and captaining that Derby team, showing the leadership abilities he's had throughout his career.
Yeah, back in the day, Sam and I used to actually play on a team together, and I always remember me trying to emulate Ronaldo on the field and Sam trying to emulate Wayne Rooney, whether that be the celebration, his ability to play a ball across the field. We even tried bicycle kicks in practice, you name it. Anything Wayne Rooney did, Sam did his very best to replicate, even on the playing field at our level. Wayne Rooney was an absolutely exceptional player. At times he wasn't the most aesthetically pleasing, but his output, his work rate, his ability to drop deep was just absolutely exceptional. We see the best players of all time are able to change. I think whether it be soccer or any sort of career, one of the biggest strengths a person can have is adaptability, and Wayne Rooney certainly had that. As he aged, he knew he couldn't keep up top, sort of started dropping deep, and was just that really good distributor. But obviously we look back at Wayne Rooney's prime and we see the finishes. We remember the goals, especially the bicycle kick against Manchester City. Just incredible, incredible goals, and you just watch them and go, wow, like I wish I had just a tiny bit of the talent Wayne Rooney did. He was an absolutely incredible player, one of my favorites to watch as a young Premier League fan, and I'll always remember him extremely fondly.
I think the reason that United fans love him so much is he was always there. He came in from Everton at 17 years old, scored the hat-trick in the Champions League on his debut, but he was always there, whether, it would have been his striking partners being Cristiano Ronaldo, Ruud van Nistelrooy at the very start, kind of Robin van Persie, towards the end. He was always there. He never left, and he was always the player that we could count on to lead the team.
Yeah, I remember a huge part of my childhood was FIFA 2006, and it always had that iconic intro video, if you know what I'm talking about. It was so much fun to watch. In so many video games, we skip intros, but this one was so good, and a huge part of that was talking about the narrator saying he felt the fever of the crowd, he heard the roar of the faithful, and he said, "You are Ronaldinho or you are Wayne Rooney," just talking about the absolute icons of the day, and it showed his volley on his debut for Everton, and that goal was just extremely special. We knew that was the beginning of an absolutely incredible career.
Absolutely. So let's hear about your loves, Ryan.
Yeah, so I tried to come up with a couple original players that a lot of people wouldn't be expecting, but I had to start off with two of my favorite players of all time. Two of these many people expect, so without further ado, I'm going to kick it off. So number one, we have Cristiano Ronaldo. I don't really have the words to describe him at this point. When he retires, I think I'm going to try and write up a piece just describing his overall impact, his style of play, the goals, the clutchness, everything you think when you hear Cristiano Ronaldo, and I'm going to try and get a piece out. But Cristiano Ronaldo has just been an absolute icon for me. He's the reason I love world football, the reason I got into the sport, just one of my favorite players, just hat trick after hat trick. I remember during his prime at Real Madrid, no matter what coach, you knew as soon as he walked onto the field, you had an advantage. It was like playing 12v11. He was impossible to mark. That absolute just ability to dominate a field, and nobody could ever touch him. Even in his bad games, he'd be pretty quiet for 70, 80 minutes, and then boom, out of nowhere, a super clutch header goal to decide the winner. He's Mr. Champions League. He was able to absolutely run that entire tournament. He has the record for goals in the Champions League. Just an absolute legend. I truly don't have the words to describe how good he is, and he will definitely always be my favorite player regardless of what club he's on.
I think you said all you needed to say there, and just for us to appreciate him. And there's a lot of things we consider sometimes you don't really appreciate anything till it's gone. I think that we're blessed to see Cristiano play, and if we may never see kind of the ability that he has, both physically and talent-wise, ever again. And the goal record that he has, especially in the Champions League, being so clutch, showing up whenever things look tough, whenever things look down. Ronaldo, of course, was there.
The saying, "you don't miss something until it's gone," definitely applies here. The season after Cristiano left, it was just extremely sad. We saw it on the fan base. It just seemed like there was lacking a bit of hope. We didn't have that leader, that goal scorer that we'd always turn to. And I think that really just goes to show how great of a player he was, the legend that is Cristiano Ronaldo, and the goals, the leadership, just the ability to put an entire club on his back when they needed him most. Well, next up on my list, I have Sergio Ramos. Now, I promise this will be my last Real Madrid player on this list, but just like Cristiano Ronaldo, I don't have the words to really describe Sergio Ramos, but he's just the captain. He is the heart and soul of Real Madrid. He joins the officials of the club to the players. His leadership, just absolutely incredible. At times, he can be a bit mistake-prone, but he's able to always get back. He has the goals that so few center backs have been able to replicate. There's obviously 92-48, which is one of the most iconic goals in European history. Us winning La Decima. Just the pure Madrismo that runs through Sergio Ramos. He's an absolutely incredible player, and we truly wouldn't be able to say how great of a club Real Madrid is without factoring in Sergio Ramos.
Absolutely, and when you think of Real Madrid, you think of the white, you think of Sergio Ramos, and from an opposing fan's point of view, I think that he can be seen as a little bit disgusting sometimes, but that's what you need in a fullback and a center back, these days. You just need that player that can put the team on his back, and so many times that's what Sergio Ramos has done.
Yeah, Sergio Ramos was just an absolute joy to watch. I hope we get a few more years of his prime out of him at Real Madrid. Next up on my list is a lot more smaller player. Since I support such a big club, I've always tried to pull for a smaller club when it comes to other leagues. And when I watch the Premier League, like I usually do, I love to pull for Norwich City. The Canaries are super fun, and a big part of that this season is because of Teemu Pukki. Now, I started watching Teemu Pukki last year when Norwich was in the championship, and he just had an absolutely insane year. Goals left and right. I think he got up to 30, or maybe a little more, but he just is sort of like a poor man's Jamie Vardy. He's able to get those runs in behind, and it's just no matter what side of the box he's on, regardless, he just bangs them in. When he's on the field, you expect goals from Teemu Pukki. He had an absolute stellar start at the beginning of this Premier League season. If many of y'all recall the Manchester City-Norwich game where Norwich won 3-2, Teemu Pukki was a huge part of that. Now, it doesn't look like they're going to stay up, but regardless, Teemu Pukki has to have his head held high at the end of this year for just having a remarkable year, and I look forward to watching him no matter what club he's on in the future. Next up on my list is a player no longer playing, but regardless, just an absolutely incredible player, and that is Diego Forlan. Now, the first World Cup I really paid attention to was the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. I watched Uruguay fairly closely. They had a lot of really good players, and they made it fairly deep in the competition, so they were really fun to watch every weekend, and a huge part of that was because of Diego Forlan. I didn't really get to watch him as a club player, but that World Cup absolutely captivated me. He kind of played that Wayne Rooney role that Sam talked about earlier, where he played as that striker/hybrid number 10. He dropped back a little deep and was able to provide through balls to Luis Suarez, Edison Cavani, but at the same time, he was banging in goals. I remember his goal against Germany. The ball came in from the right side of the field, top of the box, and Diego Forlan hit this perfect volley that bounced off the ground and went into the top corner. It was absolutely remarkable. It was just a breathtaking World Cup from Diego Forlan, and I'll always remember him fondly because of that.
I think the 2010 World Cup, especially from Uruguay, was just full of headlines, of course, with Diego Forlan, as you mentioned, just having a fantastic impact on that team. But also just, everything with Luis Suarez and the handball off the line against Ghana, and just everything at that World Cup was just fantastic, as you mentioned. But yeah, Diego Forlan for sure, for both club and country, was just a fan favorite. And how could he not be? Played it a very, very elegant style, and just a very fun player to watch.
Yeah, I remember him receiving the ball like probably 40 yards out and being able to turn, and I just got so excited because he's going to hit one, and it's going to swerve, it's going to bend. Whatever that ball did, he was just able to create these absolutely insane long goals, and it's the way he hit the ball. His free kicks were remarkable. Goalies stood absolutely no chance, and because of that, he was just an absolute joy to watch at the 2010 World Cup. Last up on my list is a player kind of similar to Diego Forlan in the way he shoots and those long-distance goals that everyone loves to see. That is Ruben Neves. Now, I have been on the Ruben Neves bandwagon for a couple years now. I've always wanted Real Madrid to sign him. He's only 23 now at Wolves, but I was watching him back at Porto when he was first coming out, and he was just so much fun to watch. A young prospect, yes, but even at that young age, he was able to dominate the field, and we've seen that translate into his career at Wolves. In the championship, you could tell just almost every game he was usually the best player on the field, and in the Premier League, he's been a big reason why Wolves have been able to thrive.
There's no secret at all when, especially watching United play against Wolves in the last season and a half, 2 seasons, whenever Ruben Neves gets that ball about 20 yards out, we close him down because he's going to hit that ball, and it is most likely going to be on target and either require a great save from the goalkeeper or just nestle in the top of the corner of the net.
Ruben Neves is one of the most underrated players in the world, in my opinion. He's got the pace. He's not super fast, but he's able to get around the field. He can track back defensively. He can push forward. He's an elite passer. He can run an absolute midfield, and that partnership with João Moutinho has just been awesome. I think we've got a lot of bright years ahead for Ruben Neves.
So as we move into the hate list here, I'll go ahead and start off with mine. There's a pretty obvious one for United fans, I think, and this is no secret for me. It's going to be Steven Gerrard, and Steven Gerrard falls into that list of players that, of course, I respect, and of course, I can appreciate what he brought to Liverpool, but I hated him growing up, and that just. Liverpool never really had the success that United have, but, I think Steven Gerrard, he really wanted that for Liverpool, and I can appreciate that, but he was just so good against United every single time he played us. He was just dictating the game, and it was just so annoying to watch how the icon of the team I hated the most growing up could just run the midfield and just kind of have such a big influence on the game. An incredible player, but that doesn't change my hatred for him. Next up on my list is going to be Vincent Kompany, another captain of a United rival. Vincent Kompany, I think less so than Steven Gerrard, had a huge impact against United. Of course, in 2012, Vincent Kompany had that header at the Etihad Stadium to kind of win City of the League against United. And of course, that went on to later in the season, Aguero's famous goal. But Vincent Kompany's always been that rock for City. He was the rock of their rebuild. And I think, as we see kind of Newcastle growing here, they're going to be looking for a player exactly like Vincent Kompany that can do kind of, the leadership ability and can be an incredibly talented center back. And I think that, as we've seen Vincent Kompany leave City, we've seen that hole that he's left and how good of a player he was. But no, he definitely was the icon for City for a long time, and a player that United had a hard time beating for a good amount of years.
Yeah, Vincent Kompany is Manchester City's Sergio Ramos in my eyes. He bleeds blue, that leader that Manchester City always needed. He was the beginning of their revival, their travel to the very top of world football. An absolutely incredible player. He had the clutch moments, the leadership, the defensive capability. Manchester City have to hold him in the highest regard for just being an absolutely incredible player for them.
Yeah, and as I move on to my third pick here, I've talked about one Liverpool player, one Manchester City player, and so why not talk about one that played for both teams? And that's going to be James Milner. Now, James Milner's never been the best player, I don't think, but I think all you have to do is look at his appearance record and say, how does a player that might not have had the most quality ever, how does he play that many games? And I think that kind of shows the servant he's been to both clubs, just an annoying player to play against, kind of like that. How is James Milner playing well against us? And that's I think he was a quiet player. He played really well a lot for both teams, and he still is for Liverpool. He's just an annoying player to play against, and it just makes you wonder, like, how has he played so many games? And I think that's his incredible work ethic for Liverpool and Manchester City, playing kind of a different role now, maybe kind of like the first substitute for Jurgen Klopp's team, of course starting some games now and captaining that team, but very annoying player to watch, but obviously I can appreciate what he's done for both clubs.
Yeah, James Milner is just such a weird player. You look at him and go, how can a average player be so important to multiple teams? He can play multiple positions. His work ethic is incredible. His leadership capabilities are wonderful. Just that presence he has in the dressing room is extremely important, and I can see why Sam dislikes him so much. If he were my rival, I would certainly not enjoy watching him have this successful career, especially deep down in the back of your mind. You're like, wow, this player is so average. He's not that great. He's not amazing at anything other than his leadership, but just the trophies, the success he's held in high regard. It would be annoying to me too.
So now moving on down my list, I'm going to go for Marco Verratti next. Now Ryan knows how much I dislike Marco Verratti for a multitude of reasons, and I think if you look back to last year, the 2019 Champions League round of 16, where Manchester United lost in the first leg to PSG, kind of Marco Verratti just really held the candle of just the most annoying player of all time. He's talented, and he wouldn't be where he was if he wasn't. But he's just so annoying to watch. He's Neymar-esque in his theatrics on the field, but at the same time he's Pirlo-esque on the field with how his ability to spread the ball all over the field, and he's kind of that Roy Keane-esque annoyance, like just getting under players' skins and kind of getting them to lash out and whatever that may be. But I think it's really difficult to find a player these days that can do that, but also be as talented as Marco Verratti is, and that just kind of encapsulates my dislike for him. And now last on my list is going to be the Snake, the Angel Di Maria. Now, my hatred for him has been there, of course before now, but he has been in the media, especially recently, talking about how Manchester United treated him so poorly and how he never wanted to go in the first place. My question to him is, why would you go in the first place then? Why would you come to Manchester United? And the reason has to be for the money. And of course, that's something that Manchester United now has tried to weed out, the players just coming for the money, and that trying to get players that want to play for the badge now. But I think with him, we just saw a player that just didn't care, that, just came in and, gave a little bit of effort here and there, but just, a terrible player to watch. And of course he has his moments, right? He has his flashy moments. But I think there's something to be said that in the fact that he plays for PSG now and how they got him to play there in the first place is just the money. And, he's kind of come back and said some really bad things about United, which I'm almost confident necessarily aren't true. And it's a really messy scenario, but something that, that United fans, won't forget anytime soon.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate the way we've seen Di Maria's time at Manchester United, because before that and after that at both Real Madrid and PSG, he has been so much fun to watch. He provides this spark, this quick ball movement, this ability to just glide around the field at crazy quick speeds. He's a really, really good player, and in the right system, he can absolutely dominate the field. But just from the very beginning, it seemed like that time at Manchester United wasn't good. There were definitely feelings hurt on both sides, and in the end, it didn't work out. And because of that, there's been some things said. It kind of reminds me of Alvaro Morata. Now, since he's moved to Atletico Madrid, he's definitely said some things about how he's always been in love with Madrid, but not Real Atletico. He's always wanted to be at the Calderon. He's never really enjoyed his time as a Galactico, and he's always wanted to be at Atletico. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off my list with my 5 least favorite players of all time. And the first one, a lot of people will probably expect, and I don't really care, and that is Leo Messi. Now, an absolutely incredible player. I respect him so much. His relationship and competition with Cristiano Ronaldo has resulted in both of them being 2 of the greatest players we've ever seen. But over the course of all these La Ligas where Madrid have been playing against prime Messi for 10 years or so now, he's just been impossible to beat, and it's really annoying. He also always performs in the Clásico usually. He comes up with goals here and there. I remember that famous one where it seemed like we were going to have the league locked up a few years ago, and we didn't tackle Messi as he was dancing around the field, drove down, had the ball crossed to him, and scored, and took his shirt off and raised that number 10 in front of the Bernabeu, and it was just extremely annoying. So Lionel Messi is probably my least favorite player of all time, even though I respect him greatly. Number 2 is Arturo Vidal. This player, it just always ends up in a fight of some kind. He's always looking to pick a fight. He's extremely rough, dirty, whether he's at Bayern, Juve, or now Barcelona. It just seems like he's almost like a hockey player. He's partially focused on fights, getting in duels with players, starting beef on the field, and it's just always a mess whenever he gets on the field.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that it's very similar in the role to Roy Keane. Obviously, less talented in my opinion, but he's always been that kind of player that's lived to get under people's skins and to ruffle some feathers out there. And of course, he wouldn't be in the position he's in now without some success over the course of his career. But it always seemed to me like he was a little overrated for what he actually gave on the field.
Yeah, next up on my list, I have Luis Suarez. Now, it's not me that needs to convince you that Luis Suarez just isn't a good human being. He's bit multiple players on the field. For a professional footballer, it's so uncalled for. Just nobody would even think that a player would be capable of doing something like that on the field. Now, granted, he is an extremely good football player, but we've seen his antics, the dives, the overall dirty play. It's just really annoying, and he's definitely cemented himself as one of my least favorite players. My next one might be a little surprising, but that is Gareth Bale. Now, I used to love Gareth Bale, so how quickly this has turned has really just been this very weird phenomenon, but these past 2.5 years, I have seen a player that has completely fallen off. He has really annoyed a coach that I absolutely love, and he just doesn't really care. His careless attitude, whether that's on the field or off it, has just annoyed me and so many other fans. It seems like he's staying at Madrid to just cash in on his weekly check while he sits on the sideline and just plays golf. Everything seems to be centered around his leisure, his ability to just get away with not really doing much. He's on huge wages and hasn't really contributed to Real Madrid in 2 to 3 years. And I think his time has come. He should have left 2 years ago, probably the same summer Cristiano left, yet he's still around, not really doing much. We're paying him to be injured, basically. So Gareth Bale, surprisingly, has just become one of my least favorite players over the years because I just cannot deal with the current status between his relationship with Real. And last up, similar to Luis Suarez, is another player like him in the striker position, and that is Diego Costa, a very dirty player. He's not aesthetically pleasing. He tries to get players into trouble. He has dives. He's played for Atletico. Even at Chelsea, antics, he was saying like the refs were out to get him. And if you can't tell, I just don't really have any sort of respect for players that just have ridiculous amount of antics on the field. It's really annoying to play against whenever you've outplayed him and he's still creating issues for you, not because of his play or his ability, but because he's tripping players on the field. He's just getting in hand checks, all sorts of stuff, flopping all around the field. And I've just really started to strongly dislike Diego Costa over the past few years.
Yeah, and I think I'll add on that a little bit. Him being at Chelsea against United, it always seemed like he used those antics, so well. That's the thing. Like, how can a player use antics to add his advantage as high as Diego Costa did?
His success
Absolutely.
in creating these antics is what's most annoying.
Yeah, and that's kind of the type of player he is. That's why he was so valuable to Chelsea and both Atletico Madrid now is his ability to do that. And that's just it's not a very fun thing to watch aesthetically wise, and definitely something that I hope the game kind of evolves away from in the next couple of years. Well, guys, I think that's going to wrap up everything we have this week on the Manchester to Madrid podcast. If you like what you heard today, go ahead and share us with your friends. If you want to kind of get in your opinion on our picks for our least favorites and favorites of all time, go ahead and talk to us on Twitter and give us your own favorites and least favorites. If you liked what you heard today, we'd love for you to subscribe to the pod on whatever podcast outlet. Share it with your friends. Follow us on Podbean as well. And thank you guys so much for watching, and we look forward to talking to you very soon.